All right, so I wanted to address a comment I got. It's a pretty long-winded comment about the Golden Saber ammunition. Why I say you should not use the 357 Magnum Golden Saber. I have nothing to gain or lose by this. I just really love ammunition testing. And coming from a standpoint of someone who reloads and shoots a lot of ammunition, I have a pretty good understanding of this. So I kind of wanted to just make this video to really point out why the Golden Saber 357 Magnum is not something that I would ever recommend using. And this comment I had, is more or less about they had really good reliability, really good experiences with the 357 Golden Saber. But the thing is, they pointed out their firearm was a 2.5-inch model 66, I believe. And when you look up the specs on that gun, it's well over 30 ounces of a revolver. The gun I was using was this. This weighs 21 ounces. This Taurus 605, and this Smith & Wesson 686 here weighs 40 ounces, 39, 40 ounces, something like that. So there's a big difference between firing around in this revolver or similar revolvers versus a lighter revolver. But the thing is, pretty much most of your ammunition that might have an issue isn't going to have an issue in a heavier revolver, simply because the recoil, you got a gun that's essentially half the weight. It technically has twice the recoil, and that recoil force coming back is what can pull a round of ammunition. And I have this one here. This is the one that pulled, and it pulled up to a certain point and then it stopped. But I wanted to show why. And I took some photos here. I wanted to show those. Now here's the bullet. The main part of the bullet here is only 35 caliber, 35 100ths of an inch. And then there's a band on the bottom here that's only 15 100ths of an inch. And that band measures about 358. So that band is technically correct for the right diameter, but the main body of the bullet is not, and there's only 15 100ths of an inch for the case to get friction on. And then there's not a cannulure or a crimp line, and that's a really important thing on a revolver cartridge, because the mouth of the brass rolls in like this into it, and if you don't have that, it's really hard to keep the bullet from pulling out under recoil. And that's not something that happens in a semi-automatic, because they're contained within the magazine. The rounds are never going to be longer than the width of that magazine, so there's not going to be a problem with a semi-auto, but you're going to have a problem with a revolver here. Now I'm going to demonstrate how this could be an issue with the impact bullet puller in a little bit here, but I wanted to show something here. Here's the 38 special version. Now I've noticed that the 38 special version is the same overall length basically as the 357 version. The bullets are the same overall, or the cartridges are the same overall length, and that makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. You're still going to be able to fire the 38 special and a 38 special revolver, because it only goes by chamber length. So it's not like, well, it's 357 length that won't chamber in a 38 special. It goes by case mouth, and once you get to the end of the case mouth, which is 38 caliber, it goes into a little bit less than 36 caliber. But anyways, the reason why it's going to work correctly in a 38 special cartridge is because you look at the band lines up, the larger bottom of the band lines up about with the case mouth of the 38 special. So it rolls right over top of that. You see a little bit of a roll there. It rolls over top of that band, and that will keep it in place correctly. The 357 Magnum version is kind of an afterthought, where it's taking that and it's pushing it down further, and you have about another 15 100ths of an inch where there's nothing holding it in other than a little bit of friction on that band. It's not rolled over that band. So I could definitely see how pretty much every time you could potentially get it where you're going to have the bullet pull to the exact amount that this pulled version came to. Because if you look at where it came to rest on the pulled one, it's just barely on the other side of that band. So that's definitely a big issue here. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a fresh round here. I'm going to try to pull it with my impact bullet puller. I'm not going to try to cause any tricks here to show something that's not. I'm going to be totally truthfully honest here, and we'll see how long it takes to pull that cartridge. All right, so what I brought out is a competitor's round. This is the 357 Magnum Hydra-Shock 158 grain. Here is a Golden Saber. And I have a lot of respect for the Hydra-Shock round. It's one of my go-to rounds. I think Federal really knows what they're doing with that cartridge here. And I brought this down to the floor because it's cement under this carpet. And that's really what you want to use when you're trying to pull a bullet. Because when you're trying to pull a bullet, you're trying to do it as quickly as possible. Here's the Golden Saber. Let's see what happens. All right. That one was actually held in a lot better than the other ones, but it took 7 hits here to pull this out. And that doesn't really mean anything until you compare it to something else. So this is a Hydra-Shock. It has the canalure. It has that case mouth crimped into it. Okay. So let's get this in here and see how long it takes to pull this. I'll hit it equally hard. And I may have to take it out and inspect it as I go along. So here we go. That's 7 hits like the Golden Saber, and we can see it starting to come a little bit out from that canalure. It's still got a little canalure hit there, or grip there. It's 21 hits, 3 times as many as the Golden Saber. Just about cleared that canalure. That's 30 hits, and we are starting to pull. $50 hits. So not only does this have a proper roll crimp, it also has a lot better grip on the bullet because it's a longer amount of the bullet that actually fits the case. So we're dealing with 2 types of crimp here, or 2 types of bullet hole, I should say. It is only a roll crimp, but if you have the bullet that is 357 or 358, it's going to correctly fit the inside of that brass all the way down the length of the bullet, and that matters a lot. That's where the Golden Saber, only 15/100ths of an inch that's fitting that. All right. Hit a little bit too hard. It's almost out. Kind of lost track there, but I think I'm about 60 or more. But this is getting on here to about average for what it normally takes for a good revolver cartridge. There we go. So I think we were about 70, 75 hits, something like that, and we finally got this to pull out. All right, let's go back onto another Golden Saber round. I'll get a fresh one. It's not like I care about these rounds anymore. Okay, so we saw what normally takes, and you can see that many hits with a hammer, that's never going to pull out under really any recoil that you could get in a revolver. Even a little super ultralight thing, it's not going to happen. So we're back onto the Golden Saber here. 3. And this makes absolutely total design sense. It makes sense why this is happening. Why is this happening? Because you're not roll crimping it over top of where it needs to roll crimp. Of course that's going to happen. That is an absolute design flaw. Now I can see in the 38 special version, like we saw with that photo, yeah, it's not a traditional crimp line or cantilever, but there is enough of a difference. We're talking about between 350 and 358. There is just enough of a difference that it kind of simulates a crimp line or cantilever, so that's working. But the 357 is an absolute afterthought to say, hey, let's just put that in there and let's set it to the exact same overall length, which will have it seated deeper and further away from the case mouth, and think that's going to hold. And having experienced that, okay, it works fine in a heavy revolver because you're cutting that recoil in half essentially, that does not make the design okay, and it does not make the design reliable. So again, I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to say it again and again. Do not use Golden Saber 357 Magnum unless you are the kind of person that wants to have a failure or a locked up revolver when you need it the most. I'm not one of those people. So just thought I'd share that. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.